Alright, Chapter 2000, Treasury Financial Manual, Part 1, Volume 1, Part 2, Volume 1, Federal Agencies, Chapter 2000, Warrant and Non-Expenditure of the Transfer Funds Transaction. Chapter to discover the procedure of the forms of the recorded warrant transaction contains information about the use of the central accounting reporting of the process non-expenditure transfers transaction, retrieve the procedure warrant transaction, Section 2010, scope of the applicability, federal program agency, the U.S. government corporation, cover the procedure with the chapter of the establishing closing appropriate amount of the accounts warrant-like transaction, processing non-expenditure of the transfer between appropriation and other accounts of the transfer, borrowing both warrants of the non-expenditure of the transfer are processed the agency transaction model within the CARS. In Section 2015, account authority in accordance with Title 31 through U.S. Canon Code 3513, the Secretary of Treasury must prepare the reports financial operation of the U.S. government. Each executive must provide the Department of Treasury with the reports and information about the financial condition operation Secretary of Treasury may require. Section 2020, definition for the term. The definition related to the chapter, please refer to the Treasury Financial Manual. Section 2025 of the warrant transactions have to describe the procedure form of the following appropriate warrants for the continuing resolution, rescission warrants, and other type of the warrants, appropriation warrants. Each of the Congress passed the annual appropriation of the acts for the supplemental for the appropriation acts to fund the federal government, the operation of the provide with the budget, and the entity that incur the obligation expenditure funds from the general fund of the U.S. government, to specifically the purpose of the Treasury, the representative of the prepared with official form, FS form 6200, Department of the Treasury operation warrant for this card for the ATM appropriate warrant application, so for the counter signature of the representative of the government accounting off the behalf of the comptroller of the General of the United States, following statement that appeared with the warrant with the counter signature for the not required of the presumed of the Treasury of the Department of General Accounting off the Joint Regulation Number 5 and Number 7. Appropriation warrant is evidence of congressional action for the fund programs. In addition, with the appropriation warrant, to establish the amount of the period available the money to any of the authorized withdrawal of the general fund of the U.S. government, and enacted with the legislation and other appropriation provides the budget authority the form of the appropriation and either must submit letter to Treasury requesting appropriation process. The request letter in PDF format may be submitted via the email. Must include the following specific warrant type requested: Treasury Appropriation Fund, amount with the request of special authority, including U.S. statutes at large and citation U.S. Code section, subjection, identifiers, and designated account period, month of the posting, month of the contact, digital signature. The FBA must submit with a letter request for the following circumstance: identified appropriation unspecified amount of the money operation funded from unavailable resource for the available receipts for legislation that provides amount with the derived from the dedicated collection receipts collected with the unavailable receipt account, the rescissions, other when warrant appropriated amount for the required additional information that need before warrant can be issued, such as one of the three elements in mission and time, purpose, and amount of the language included up to but not exceeding no more than a bill and reconciliation format. The language is under the section matter number. Alright, 2025-20, the operation warrant for the continuing resolution covered with the Don and Act for the operation beginning with the fiscal year, or often be with the continuing resolution also evidence specific activity continue with the operation provided with the budget to throw over the Congress and act for the regular operation. Congress receiving an act for the continuing resolution to cover the limited period of the amount of the calendar quarter of the continuing resolution, usually specify the appropriate amount of the exceed to available to the fund files whenever the activity later fund with the regular operation. The Congress intended the end of the activity, enable applicable operation with the providing of the activity or fixed cutoff date of the continuing resolution. Unlike regular preparation act, the continual resolution usually does not appropriate a specified sum of the money for the amount usually based on the annual operation of the previous fiscal year of the current cover the only amount of the necessary of the continue with the project with the authority of the time of the Congress, the other operation of the amount of the specified rate of the current rate in the House pass level, the Senate pass level, the conference pass level, the budget estimate. Warrants are not issued with the Congress and act with the regular operation bill unless the end are under the official continuing resolution. Any of the following year of the continuing resolution must require the warrant of the Treasury annualized level of the amount with the priority of the continuing resolution. Any of the must submit with these request for the possible obligations inquired under the authority of the continuing resolution, and the letter of the request for the full year continuing resolution should include the following information: specific warrant type requested Treasury application fund appropriate request appropriate of the account with the prior fiscal year year, specific legal authority of the U.S. statutes at large and citation U.S. Code section, subsection identifiers, and approve the apportionment, point of contact, digital signatures, design, accounting period, month of posting, and in addition, the Treasury may request it needs provided the following amount of the formal budget, the amount of the current fiscal year, and amount of the unobligated balance carried over the previous fiscal year into the current fiscal year upon the receipt appropriation required of the Treasury is one with the annualized level of the amount of the appropriated of the Treasury handle of the programs expected with them to the provision of the continuance resolution. Individuals amounts provided within the continuing resolution are subject to apportionment. Exemptions made for the issue warrants of the continuing resolution and for the continuing resolution covers specific mandatory federal payments. Trim of the warrant, prepare the subsequent and enacted operation bills, require the non-special action letter from the normal procedure of the warranting regular applications apply. 2025-30 recession to fund recession legislation may temporarily permanently reduce the budget authority of the previously provided by Congress and the appropriation warrant provided for the board budget authority with the subsequent permanent resign through the action for the board with the cutout specific recession warrants are prepared to reduce the original amount of the appropriated. Typically, if the end of the receipt of the warranty operation subsequently becomes the subject of the recession, the entity should request the recession warrant. A general rule of decisions involved in spending authority of the offsetting and collection as well as a special trust of the revolving funds classified the temporarily non-available the obligation of temporary recessions involved the unavailable to receive the account of the entity that must request the recession warrant to reduce the original amount of the appropriated with the expenditure account with the return of the amount of the unavailable to receive account. Prior to private the recession fund with the source of the funds will be identified. The information shall include the request of the letter, entry of the proper accounting office management budget number A11 for the guidance related to the circumcision special warrant types and description. Appropriated to finite regular, appropriated notified in advance, appropriated identified regular, appropriated identified in advance, appropriated identified PY adjustment, appropriation and other, appropriation loan subsidiary, appropriation loan administrative expense, appropriation estimated subsidiary, appropriation special trust and fund appropriated receipt expenditures, appropriation special trust fund appropriated with the receipt recipient. Recession appropriation definition regular, recession appropriation definition regular, recession appropriation definition advance, recession appropriation identification indefinite advance, recession appropriation special trust fund unappropriated receipts and expenditures, recession's unobligated balance to finite regular, recession unobligated balance to finite advance, recession's unobligated balance special trust fund unappropriated receipts and expenditure that appropriated indefinite withdrawn, surplus special trust available for restoration, surplus unavailable to restoration. The non-expenditure transfers transactions over the car's ATM special describe the procedure forms as the edge of the car's ATM non-expenditure transfer application, car's ATM non-expenditure transfer application, including transfer types USSSGL budgetary account for non-expenditure transfer, USSSGL budgetary account for non-expenditure transfer. This section does not include the non-expenditure transfer for borrowings, section 2035. 2030-10 except for the car's ATM net application net, either for the car's ATM net application for the car's enrollment link, specific guidance for centralized arming AR guidance process. After completion enrollment, the property notice of the receipt of the proper credential and into the bank with except for the car's ATM net application. Car's ATM net application. Car's application performs systematic interference for the producer system and the record of the Treasury Central Accounting System. Non-expenditure transfer that does not appeal to the impact of the federal government and for the budget with the triple of the decision, the figure that does not appear for the Treasury publication of the budget documents for the receipt of the expenditure for the consequently even it should not be reported with the report of the non-expenditure for the transfer of the classification transaction accounting component over the monthly statement of the transaction. Still, the entity should be recorded such for the transaction within their own administrative account processes based upon legislation. Either can entities can use the non-expenditure for the transactions to increase the decree between accounts authorized by law with the entry of the car's ATM net with the application for the net transfer transaction. The car's ATM non-expenditure transaction application screens allows only one account symbol. The transfer of signs of the multiple account symbol. The transfer to inside the entities must enter the following information: transfer type of the transfer times type determine the impact of the categorical transaction on the card cars, sub-transfer for the transfer the drop-down list available to USSGL for the budgetary accounts associated with the transfer type selected selection and appropriated by the USSGL budgetary account is required. Transaction date of the transaction into the ATM application determined the account of the period of the effective date of the transaction of the taken will take place at agency reference to the name of that, even for the internal tracking purpose. Legal authority, legislative citation with the congressional authority to validate the transfer of the proper specific legal authority, including the U.S. statutory at large. Statutes at large citation, section, subsection, identifier treasury requires U.S. state or large U.S. code citation, public level codified with the FPA with a show reference for the U.S. code citation. Only comment with the entities are required to provide following information commented with the net request to gain transfer return funds necessary with any other pertinent information. Transfer accounting symbol from transfer accounting symbol to transfer accounting symbol and amount from the amount of the ATM application file for the transfer the TAS and net with the early month of possible with any involved transaction process of the transaction during same account period with no later than later last work day of each month of the document transfer for the provided no benefit of the transfer account with the reorganization example separated obligated and unobligated balance of the non-expenditure transfer further separated with the account of the current year operation balance of the prior operation and expend with multi-year non-year operations while in all portion of the amount of the advance for the transfer of the non-expenditure transaction return with the original of the transfer accounting symbol with the amount with the originally transfer of the must initiate with the net return funds relatively with the initial of the transfer the equivalent of the proper legislative reference for the return funds should be mirrored with the original transaction. Legal reference for the other in returning entity that must know with the common field of the use fund with the return of the legislation citation cited must support with the authorized transfer fund back to the transfer accounting symbol and either of the car's ATM and then an expenditure transfer of the application of the tax pending the document throughout with the final approval of the post process of the adult audit history of the timeline posted transaction application cards allowed the need to print copy of the non-expenditure transaction audit history as well as the query download transaction the activity non-expenditure transaction limited to transaction both withdrawal of the credit over the transaction accounting symbol within the budgetary example the net and expenditure transaction accomplished between 103,000 the revolving 4,000 the trust fund 8,000 special fund 5,000 treasury accounting symbol within the budget and the process of the trust and trust transfer the non-expenditure transfer between the trust fund with the other funds regardless of the purpose cannot be profited cars or ATM the non-expenditure transfer and application with exemption do not transfer funds from the deposit of the foreign fund accounts of 6,000 with the receipt of the transfer accounting symbol to the non-expenditure transfer documents. See transfer the general fund receipts of the transfer type of exemption below the information appendix 1 and you should select the appropriate transfer of the summarized below the operation transfer of the transfer the increase the decree of the budget authority of the transfer accounting symbol of the even current year budget authority balance transfer the transfer the increase the decree of the prior year budget authority no entity must determine whether the input of the allocation transfer the prior entity with the child of the cards either with the appropriation current year over the payment of the prior year and transfer of the pre-appropriation of the transfer of the transfer the increase the decree of the unobligated the balance of the transfer accounting symbol of the prior year transfer of authority used in current year with the transfer of the entity with the transfer unobligated the balance between the express of the transfer accounting system or treasury accounting symbol of the current treasury accounting symbol of the transfer the representative of the redistribution fund with the redelegation adjustment with the obligation authority and permit the funds expended with the under appropriation fund symbol the transfer of the general fund received the previously called capital transfers these transfer the credit miscellaneous report with the credits were paid with the government's investment with the distributed of the earnings refund with these transfers also include special non-revolving trust funds report with the general fund of the U.S. government for permanent reduction it needs must be the agency that identifier over the miscellaneous report with the treasury accounting symbol for all of the transfer back to general funds of the U.S. government. 2030 USSGL budgetary non-expenditure of the transfers. Treasury account with the Office of Management Budget and even determine they include for the USSGL budgetary prior to the account and confirmation submission for the non-expenditure transfers, assets of even the reconciliation report with the non-expenditure transfer, the data of the bill of the conference of the report with the provide with the even the officialship of the Office of Management Budget, all out for verification data of the Office of Management Budget max A11 a 11th budget preparation system, fiscal year of the car's ATM next and expenditure of the transfer application and the GTAS government-wide transfer accounting symbol. Headings must select with the USSSGL budgetary account with certifying the non-expenditure transfers requested with the treasury of the car's ATM non-expenditure treasury. Non-expenditure transfer application include the drop-down list of the sub-transfer the type of the field of the USSSGL budgetary account directly with the non-expenditure treasury account that entities must select with the USSSGL budgetary accounts according with the USSSGL account is avoided at need with the government-wide elimination scripts and leave for additional guidance with the USSSGL budgetary account submitting with the net and its appendix 1. 2030-40 for the using the USSSGL property account with the non-expenditure transfer of the USSSGL of the proprietary account with the common with the non-expenditure transfer the request the exit with the entity with the analyze the requirement concealing with the non-expenditure transfer data swiftly help with the preparing quarterly intra-governmental transaction reconciliation process because of these are mixed funds with the treasury account symbols in a position in the treasury account the transfer account symbols can include the combination of following the unexpected operation derived from the general fund received so the non-dedicated collection law with specifically purpose of the financial sort of the economy act revenue impact cumulative of the result operation therefore the budget for the net expenditure treasury with the treasury account symbol the transfer of the determine the source of the funds transfer recorded common field with the card net expenditure transfer entry screen USSSGL proprietary account with the designated the funding derived with either of the following for expenditure appropriation general fund reserve for the non-dedicated collection law specifically for the USSSGL with the 310 300 unappropriated operation transfer out for financial source the impact cumulative of the results of the operation USSSGL is 576 non-expenditure financing so for the transfer other out the transfer to and the must have either the record of the USSSGL of the proprietary account with the corresponding account either of the transfer and either the expenditure operate for the general fund and reach for the non-dedicated collection by law purposes of the USSSGL of the 310 200 unexpected operation transfer with the corresponding USSSGL amount with 310 300 or for expenditure unexpended operation for the general fund resource for the non-dedicated collections by law with specific purpose of the SSSG account 575 500 non-expenditure sole financial source transfer and others corresponding USSSG account 576 500 both entities must record the match for the USSSGL proprietary account to avoid entity with wide government-wide elimination scripting additional guidance to the USSSGL proprietary account submitting with non-expenditure transfers see appendix 1 see section 2035 borrowing section discrepancies the following borrowing for the federal financing banks borrowing from the treasurer 2035-10 borrowing with official FFB or federal financial banks of the cards ATM net application of the borrowings of the federal financial banks amounts loan with the federal financial banks with the authorized to issue sell will guarantee the obligation to enter the borrow of the federal financing banks rather than borrowing the treasury ensuring the security of the public interest payments of the such loans represent expenditure transaction not in this category is 20 borrowings of the treasury used in cars borrowing application the withdrawal of the credits result of the authorized borrowing for the treasury expended public the debt receipts of the other than that non-expenditure transfer of the transaction involved with the obligation and expenditure of the reimbursement of the borrowings or amount of the treasury advance the under loan authorization amount of the repay of the loan principal the interest payment on such loan representation expenditure transaction are not in this category. In context, we have the budget reporting branch central accounting reporting division general ledger advisory branch financial reporting advisory division financial report advisory division intergovernmental transaction reconciliation branch federal investment borrowers branch specialist asset liability division general ledger advisory branch financial advisory division and appendix. And that was Chapter 2000, Volume 1, Federal Agencies, Treasury Financial Management Agencies, Section 2, Chapter 2000. Chapter 320 with the Foreign Currency Accounting Reporting System.